I have a couple of readings for you before I get into my own remarks. The first is a recounting of a story. It is from the book God and the Machine, which is actually where I drew a lot of my material for this talk, by Dr. Ann Forst, who is a theologian who, as I will mention in my remarks, spent a number of years actually as a resident at the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab, where as a theologian she was not always entirely welcomed. This is the story of the golem, a story of the golem. The wife of Rabbi Lowe could not understand why her husband had forbidden the use of the golem for private purposes. And when, just before Passover, she was short of help, she allowed herself to give the golem orders to fill 2 large water kegs, which stood in the kitchen, which was all prepared for the holiday. She thought also that a service in preparation for the Passover feast did not come under the head of secular purposes. But she had a very unpleasant experience. The golem took the pails and ran swiftly to the brook. Several hours later, the courtyard of the house of the rabbi was flooded with water, and the people were crying, "Water! Water!" The secret source from which this water was flowing was sunk. But it was not found until the golem was seen patiently obeying his orders by continuing to pour water into the kegs which had been filled a long time before. This explained the flood, and there was much laughter over the golem's mistake. Since that time, the people took care not to give the golem any profane work to do. To this very day in Prague, people say to an unskilled artisan, "You are as competent for this work as Joseph Golem was as a water carrier." Second reading is The 3 Laws of Robotics, first published in Isaac Asimov's 1942 short story, Runaround. The first law: a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. The second law: a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. The third law: a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or the second law. Problem with using technology is it has a mind of its own. There we go. In a darkened theater, my hand freezes over the bag of popcorn. I'm fixed on the screen as a small robot who has overcome so many obstacles, not the least of them his own programming, dodged relentless pursuers, also robots, and barely evaded harrowing danger until the fight finally drained out of him. He lies there, nearly defeated, the last faded blue bar of energy on his chest, blinking. 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 A hush falls over the audience, broken finally by a small, pleading voice. "Don't die, Wall-E!" The movie, of course, was Wall-E, a cartoon about a robot, his pet cockroach, the robot he loves, and how they all eventually save humanity. It's a documentary. I love the movie, and of course I reveled in that moment of that little girl's heartfelt cry. It was years before it occurred to me the kid didn't make any sense. I mean, come on, it's a robot. How could it die? It wasn't even alive in the first place. Or was it? Okay, I know. Relax, you're saying. It's not even a real robot, Chad. It was a movie. A cartoon movie. Yeah, I know. But Wall-E was real to that kid. And in that moment, to me. And anyway, these are the sorts of moments that start me wondering. What does it say about me, about every person sitting in that theater, that we were captivated, worried, terrified even, about what was about to befall poor Wall-E the robot? And what if it was a real robot? At what point does it become a being that I should care about? And what does our reaction to artificial intelligence, even pretend cartoon artificial intelligence, tell us about ourselves? Keeping in mind that not all of the robots we see on the screen are cute and heroic. Sure, there's C-3PO and R2-D2. But there's also Hale from Space Odyssey. And, of course, the Terminator. So we root for intelligent robots as adorable heroes, or we cower in fear because they're coming to kill us all. What exactly do we think about artificial intelligence, and why? Let's take a step back. What is artificial intelligence? We've had one definition this morning, but I'm pretty sure it's not created by artificial insemination. Here's one very technical definition. It's the part of computer science and electrical engineering that attempts to build the machines that are capable of performing functions for which we intuitively presume intelligence is necessary. I'm not going to focus on the technical definition this morning because I don't have a technical education and I don't understand it. Anne Forrest, the theologian I mentioned before I did the readings, spent years doing her postdoc at MIT's AI lab. And she finds a definition in the functions that the study of AI might serve. In her book, God in the Machine, she finds a useful analogy in the Jewish golem story. Golems, she writes, had a double function. They were tools to help humankind, and they were attempts to understand God and God's creations. Modern artificial intelligence can serve a similar purpose. It can use computers and robots for more than normal machines are currently used for. And it can use computers and robots to help us to understand ourselves. Part of what considering AI shows us is the way we draw lines within ourselves and between each other. The theologian Paul Tillich saw sin not as a bad act, but as estrangement. Estrangement from God, and estrangement from ourselves and our world and from each other. Confronting manufactured intelligence puts some of this estrangement, this separation, on display. Let's start with the way we design machines to think, for lack of a better word. Forrest notes in her book that for millennia, philosophers have conceptualized two ways that humans think about reality. There is logos and mythos. Logos is the use of objective observation to explain the world around us. In the realm of mythos, we tell stories to find meaning, to address such existential questions as, what does it mean to be human? Logos is how, mythos is why. In Western culture, and in many Unitarian churches, logos holds sway. Or at least we like to think it does. It is the root of the word logic, and it is the root, or the suffix, I guess, at the end of ologies, biology, psychology, things that derive from science and observation. We convince ourselves that we can find truth in rational consideration of observable facts, that we can see and measure, what we see and measure can be relied upon. And so we tend to devalue what we can't observe and categorize, which falls in the realm of mythos. Computer intelligence, unsurprisingly, is pretty firmly tied, at least for now, to the realm of logos. Processors can only take the data fed to them and provide an analysis of it, perhaps act on it according to the instructions we give those machines. Machines accept the data without prejudice, produce results without bias. Or so we assume. But the more we rely on machines to analyze the mountains of information that we face every day, the more we have to consider the limits of those machines. They can only take in information we give them or make observations with devices we connect to them. If we equip a computer with a black and white camera, It cannot give us an analysis based on color. Computers won't analyze information we don't tell them to analyze. Their reasoning, if that's what we want to call it, is limited by their connection to the world, just like ours. Isaac Asimov envisioned the problem, or a fanciful version of it, in one of the short stories in his I, Robot collection. A robot, QT-1, is constructed and activated for the first time on a space station. Based on all observable data, the robot concludes that there is no universe outside that station. Outside the windows is simply a black backdrop with randomly spaced lights. Why? Well, that's not QT's concern. It's the way it is. It dismisses as delusional the human explanation that those are stars and planets driving its human masters kind of nuts. They can't get through to the robot because, as one of them says, he's a reasoning robot. He believes only in reason, and there's only one trouble with that. You can prove anything you want to by coldly logical reason, if you pick the proper postulates. That, of course, is where mythos comes in. Asking why, filling in the gaps left by the merely observable, is a core function of humanity and human existence and human intelligence. The stories we tell change. They have changed over millennia of humanity's existence, and they change over the scant years of each one of our lives. Mythos, I would venture, is the reason each of us is here on a Sunday morning. We search for truth and meaning, and our understanding of both changes as we learn and grow and are challenged by ourselves, and I hope by each other. The stories we craft at each moment of our lives put those observed facts into a context, helps lend sense to our lives. Even the most ardent rationalist needs that context to function in the world. Now, our great respect for rationality ties into another separation revealed by a fascination with artificial intelligence, the perceived distinction between our intellects and our bodies. We think in terms of having a body, not in terms of being a body. I think, therefore I am, goes the famous saying. The body's job is pretty much just to carry the brain around. But at MIT, the AI researchers discovered that for an AI system to learn, it needed a way to interact with the world. And that what it learned was defined by the tools it had for that interaction. The idea is called embodied AI, or in our cases, just embodied intelligence. We are not disembodied brains. And we have learned to be who we are, to contemplate the world the way we do, to understand each other, because we have bodies that move and work in certain ways. Different for each of us and changing through all of our lives. But eyes to see, or not. Ears to hear, or not. Skin to touch. Change our bodies, we change our minds. Think, for example, of what happens when you're famished. How well does your mind focus on anything else? What happens to your patience? Or consider phantom limb syndrome. Parts of our brain are connected to specific parts of our body. And if we lose that limb, that section of the brain keeps firing, trying to gather information. I don't have nearly enough time, or knowledge, frankly, to get into the way biochemistry and hormones steer the way we think. But the more I do learn on that subject, the more I wonder just what it means for humans to actually have free will. The question of free will is a frequently repeated theme in science fiction stories about self-aware intelligence or computers or robots. It agonized an operating system named Samantha in the movie Her. Came out in 2013. And part of the reason I write the types of sermons I do is I get to do research by doing things like watching the movie Her and reading I, Robot and seeing Blade Runner. It's, the best form of theology. If you haven't seen Her, I strongly recommend it. It is a movie about a love affair, about a heartbroken man and his computer operating system. And it sounds bizarre or weird, and it kind of is, but it is brilliant. The system, that computer operating system, was designed to learn and to appear to be a conscious being in its own right. This particular operating system named itself Samantha, and she has doubts about herself while she and her human boyfriend make up after an argument. She says, "Earlier I was thinking about how I was feeling annoyed. And then I had this terrible thought, like, are these feelings even real, or are they just programmed? And that feeling really hurts, and then I get angry at myself for even feeling pain." We may not be programmed like an operating system. I at least don't believe we are the product of anybody's deliberate design. But we're kidding ourselves whenever we think that the way we think and act is the product of purely independent, rational thought. We may not be entirely comfortable with the idea that the choices we make might not be entirely our choice. I know I don't like it, but it's not like there's a whole lot we can do about it. In the end, maybe all we can say, like Samantha finally concluded, is screw it. Computers, robots, artificial intelligence, they aren't us. They don't think like us. But the question is not whether computers are or will be intelligent as humans. The question is whether they will be intelligent like humans. The answer is almost certainly no. So the next question is, does it matter? To me, the answer depends on whether you're talking about logos or mythos, objective reality or human narrative. In reality, as one scientist put it, the question of whether machines can think, let me try that quote again. The question of whether machines can think is about as relevant as the question of whether submarines can swim. We have designed these machines to perform designated tasks. And how they perform those tasks probably doesn't matter much. A submarine moves through the water. Whether its propulsion is swimming doesn't really matter to the crew. You press a button on your iPhone and Siri tells you whether that guy in that one movie got an Oscar. Did Siri think about that answer? Who cares? You just wanted to win a bar bet. But in the speculative realm of mythos, whether computers think does present questions that might matter. It confronts us with questions of what it means to be a person, what it might mean to have inherent worth and dignity, and just how good we might be or not be at honoring that worth in the other. Consider this. If computer scientists could build a program that recreated the personality of somebody you loved, all the memories, the personality, the quirks, even the little tics that irritated you, a recreation so convincing that you couldn't tell the difference, would you care that this crafted being wasn't the actual person? Now flip the question. What if the simulation did care? Wanted to be its own person? Or what if the simulation couldn't tell and believed it was your loved one? What rights would this digital being have? Is it a person? Dr. Forst poses this personhood question in her lectures. She shows her audience video footage of the robot Kismet. Kismet is programmed to read basic social cues, voice tone and melody, a few words, posture, and to react to them. It does not possess language, and it does not learn. It won't remember you, but it will respond to you whenever you walk into the room. Forst recounts a time that she was showing Kismet to a group of people, and the robot wasn't paying attention to her. Its eyes kept wandering around to the rest of the audience. And so she complained in